Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also an owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Event, and I'm going to welcome you to our program today. Now, what I do is I take an individual horror film from any subgenre of horror in any decade, and me and my special guest will sit down and talk and conversate and just kind of shoot the shit about a particular movie. Hopefully, you will be entertained by what we have to say because we are being entertained by the movie. But if you're not entertained, too bad. We will love you to be listening to the rest of the show because we do some crazy shit along the way, which means we go off on some tangents. And that's perfectly fine because sometimes we find things interesting about a particular film that other people just don't talk about. That being said, my special guests are always different, so you're always going to have a different show every time you listen to us. So that is one of the great things. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to get to the special guest that's going to be talking about the movie today, and his name is Mr. Philip Ray. I want to thank you, Philip, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we are going to talk about the infamous, and I say infamous, and I mean it in a very great way, in my opinion, the infamous Alien 3 from 1992. Now, I know already, there is already a lot of discussion about this film, but we are going to hopefully shed some light on your brains about this film. Now, Philip, I have to know when you first came across this movie and kind of like what was your general impressions about it because I know what mine are.
So yeah, so obviously I did not see it in theaters because I was not born. But again, the Alien series is well known, and I went basically down the line of watching the Alien movies, and yeah, I got to Alien 3 at some point. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a surprise here. I don't like the movie.
Okay, so I'm going to be completely the opposite of you on this one. I fucking love this movie. Now, I love both the theatrical film of this, as well as the producer's cut. I am not going to say director's cut because David Fincher, from what I've been told, refuses to come back and actually do a director's cut of this film. This is the only one of the quadrilogy, the original four films, that they have not done a director's cut of because it was so butchered in his eyes, and it was butchered. And I say that lovingly because if you have read the novelization, if you have read the original screenplay, if you have read the Dark Horse comic book that was based on the original screenplay, then you will know that this movie has a lot of shit that's missing. And the stuff that's missing makes this a fucking brilliant movie. Now, the producer's cut, which is what I saw, I rewatched that again for this conversation. So I will not be making references to the original theatrical cut. I'll be making references to the producer's cut. So the producer's cut, in my opinion, is as close as we are going to get to the intention that David Fincher had with this film. I think this is more a film in which we watch the cinematic techniques at their earliest stages as David Fincher is making his first feature length film that he would later use in his films like the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Seven, and even Gone Girl. Those techniques are in this film, but it's hampered because of some of those shortcomings that were forced upon him by the studio. But the film looks fucking amazing. It looks just as good as the other two films, and without a doubt, I think some of the stuff that was used that David Fincher decided to use in this film is better than in the other two films. This one just got fucking butchered to hell. So and I saw this movie at the theater the weekend it came out because I'm a huge Alien fan and I had to see when they came out with a new film. So me and my brothers and my father and I think my sister, we all kind of walked and saw this movie at the theater on the weekend it came out. And I think I was the only one that actually enjoyed it. I do. The movie is fucking depressing. It is not like the other two movies aren't exactly the ray of sunshine. But this movie is fucking depressing.
Yeah, it's very depressing. It's very nihilistic. I mean, that's one of the reasons why some of the cast and some of the uh, original cast from the other movies and James Cameron and all of that. Like that's why some that do not like this movie because of how nihilistic it is, which I will kind of agree with. It's going to be an interesting episode with this because I am also well aware about Alien 3 and all the stuff. So like for the viewers who don't know, this movie was in develop when you talk about movies that are in development hell, this is one of the prime examples of movie in development hell. This movie went through so many different scripts. There was, I think, a total of like 4 or 5 or 6 scripts, different scripts that were written, and the final product is an amalgamation of 2 scripts that were kind of edited and stuff, and it's very much like this is when you talk about studio interference, before you get to stuff later on in life, like Fan Stick and stuff more recent. Alien 3 was the poster child of what happens when a studio interferes too much into a series and stuff. Uh, 'Cause yeah, and 'cause this movie again is the prime example of that.
I, this movie, I don't think the studio is interfered as nearly as much as a lot of people claim it does. Because if a studio had really interfered as much as they would, as a studio would have, you would not have all the religious undertones and the belief of faith in this movie. If the studio had known at the beginning what the fuck they were trying to do. That is the aspect of the film that I absolutely love, and what differentiates this film from any of the other films in this franchise is the idea that David Fincher and the writers, the many different writers, the ideal of how faith is used between these inmates who have been more or less forgotten about on this prison planet, and the way that they interact with each other and with their bosses, the superintendent and Aaron's, who are not lifers there. And then, of course, when they get with Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is thrust upon them, the first female that any of them have seen in years, and that ideal tests their faith, only in the system but with each other as well. That is the aspect of this film that makes it such a brilliant film, which you miss in the theatrical cut because a lot of that is cut out. A lot of that's cut out. Some of it's still
Well,
there, but a lot of it's cut out.
Well, the I will disagree with the earlier comment about if this was studio interference, they would have kept that. No, that was in one of the billion scripts and stuff.
Yeah.
Originally, it was Ripley landed on this. This one is the most famous one. This one may have gotten the one that got the book. I can't got the comic. She lands on a
Yeah.
basically a wood planet with a bunch of monks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, again, and that's though some of those aspects they took and basically changed it. So instead of monks, it's prisoners. And instead of this wood planet, it was the iron thing, the iron kind of oilery stuff. And that was specifically done for budget because again, the scenic department was like, this is going to cost us too much money. We can't even imagine how we did this and stuff. And so that's why they changed it and stuff. The biggest thing with this movie was 20th Century Fox basically told David Fincher, we don't care if this movie sucks and doesn't make sense. We just wanted to make money. And so that's why there was a lot of like cutting, like for example, the famous scene the of when the alien bursts into the hospital, and you get and he kills
Superintendent
Leonard,
or Clemens
uh when he cl- uh when he kills Clemens,
in the
Clemens,
infirmary.
yeah, in the infirmary, and then has the stare down with Ripley and stuff. That was something that the one of the Fox producers didn't want David to video, and David actually because again, like they thought that was going to cost too much money, and basically David said that he had to take a camera, run and grab Sigourney Weaver and shoot the scene real quick because the producers didn't think that scene was necessary and was going to cost too much money. Which is funny because again, that was such the most iconic shot in the whole movie. And originally, if David Fincher didn't go and do it himself, the scene would have not been in it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, stepping back just a little bit, one of the crazy things about 20th Century Fox and this franchise is that they always have hired an up and coming director to take over the reins, mostly because they're cheap. Even James Cameron was not nearly as big as he was when he did Aliens, and neither was Ridley Scott. They were all kind of at the beginning of their careers. David Fincher was mostly known for nothing but music videos before this film, and then of course the partners in for the fourth film had only done French movies before they came over into the fourth movie. It's just something that they've done to keep costs down. I would hazard to think how much they actually kept the cost down on this film because so much of the sets seem are fucking practical, and it seems like the most CGI is the actual alien, which is the only thing that really tends to have dated itself was the CGI for the alien. I remember seeing it at the theater.
Oh, the CG for the alien looks so bad.
Well, I saw when I saw it
looks
at the theater. When I saw it at the theater in '92. It was great. It was amazing. But it's because of the technology now. It's the one thing that dated badly. But that's because the previous two movies did almost everything practical effects. Creating the Queen alien, the Warrior aliens, all those are all practical effects. But with this film, they couldn't do any of it practical effects because of the way, except for close-ups and stuff like that, because of the way the alien moved and was. Like they couldn't do a man in a costume for this one. I think that was a
No,
bad choice.
they wanted this alien to be fast.
Yeah, they was. I think that was a bad choice because if it had been practical, I think it would have sustained time. But that is the one thing that looks even bad when you're watching the the four. I didn't even watch a 4K. I was watching the Blu-ray version. It doesn't look as crisp as everything else, or it looks a little bit too crisp depending on what scene you're watching. And that was only something they decided to do with this film. They decided to make it fast, and they decided to make it different. Even the nature of where the alien came from changed between the theatrical cut and the producer's cut. Have you seen the producer's cut, by the way?
I've seen a couple clips from it, but I mostly watched the theatrical cut.
So the theatrical cut has the alien being birthed from a dog.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there, they've known this as a dog alien. But in the producer's cut, it is not a dog. It comes from one of the cow slash yak slash the wild animals that they herd stuff on the planet. It is not a dog alien. So you know, and their birth sequences are very different. But the editing for the producer's cut is much more interesting because of the way they cut back and forth between that and the fact that they're cremating Hicks and Newt's bodies. You have Dylan doing his prayer over the bodies before they're cremated. And that's
which is funny.
Go ahead.
Because for me, because I have seen the clip. I did see the clip of the alternate cut with the ox. And I actually kind of agree with the decision of making it a dog because the thing is, it doesn't, when you look at the aspects of what this alien acts, it actually makes more sense for it to come from a dog versus an ox because like a dog is fast, a dog is smaller, a dog is linkier, which is what this alien is, versus an ox, which if I think an alien's coming out of an ox, I'm imagining it's going to be a brute. I'm imagining it's going to be bigger, it's going to be heftier and stuff. Because that I will give one credit to this movie about that was the concept of the alien having different renditions depending on what host is coming out of is a cool idea. It's really cool. I actually there was an Alien versus Predator video game and stuff, and they explored it a lot more in that, and I played that game, and I really like that concept of like, oh, depending on where the alien comes out of, we'll have different renditions and stuff. But going back to this, so to me, I'm actually okay. I think actually the ox makes less sense And I was actually okay with the fact, even though the dog one is cut not as good as the ox one, the sensibility makes more sense
Well, I
of
get
why it comes out of dog.
well, I get a sense that when the studio decided to make changes to Fincher's film, he wasn't available for those cuts.
Oh yeah, I mean Finch got to a point where he just again he was just over the film and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that. I get that because like I said, one of the aspects I loved is the whole religious aspects of the film. The idea of faith between these characters, the prisoners, and the lack of faith by anyone who's in science, like Clemens or Ripley or the superintendent and Aaron's. They don't believe in the faith of Dylan and his brotherhood. So they're still monks in a sense, except they have bad pasts, uh, which is needed, for some of the scenes in the film that in reality you have those moments in the film where you need to have something happening. So, I could see why they changed it because if they were all monks, well, they'd be kind of happy, happy, joy, joy, no matter what planet they were on. They wouldn't make for very nuanced characters, so to speak.
Well, to be honest, the prisoners are not that nuanced either. Like the problem is you know, um, other than Clemens, other than like you Dylan, and then you've got the fanatic, the Walter character. A lot of these inmates are very kind of just generic. Like they're very much like once they start killing like once like Clemens dies and stuff. Uh, Other than Dylan, I'm like a lot of these characters just all look the same, and so it's like so that's like another problem with this. One of my problems with this movie and stuff is unlike the last two at this point with the Alien movies that had the cast was slightly endearing to a point and stuff. Like they all had like the crew in the first one and then the Marines in the second, like they all had their like they had all their little personalities that like I grow to care about. Where in this movie I couldn't give two craps about a lot of the prisoners, like because they were all just kind of generic and boring and they were very, very like just irreplaceable.
You mean replaceable?
Sorry, replaceable. Thank you. But yeah, they just weren't that they weren't interesting. They weren't interesting characters.
I don't think having seen this movie way too many times. I've only seen the producer's cut 3 times now. But the original theatrical cut I've seen a lot of times. Which is why I didn't go back to rewatch it. But the thing for me is I know most of the actors who play the prisoners now, as opposed to when I saw it in '92. Everyone from Pete Postlethwaite to Holtz, what's his last name from the other David Fincher show. Oh my God, I can't even think of this other show. This the show he put on Netflix that everyone loves, the Mindhunter, and all the other actors I know now, as opposed to when this came out in '92, and I had the same feelings you did, where I didn't get to know a lot of them other than Golic and Morse. Those are about the only two because Morse is the only one that fucking survives at the very
Yeah.
end. And Golic is the one who sees the xenomorph as a god to worship. That's all cut out of the theatrical cut, by the way. Most of
Yeah,
all,
I did. That's another thing, and I did watch those scenes again, which again, that was another just odd cut, like where it was like some of the cuts I understand why they happened, but some of them like with Golic, that makes no sense because again, it's just again, it's everyone says it's one of the biggest plot holes that he
it is.
just disappears.
Well, that whole ideal is the ideal, and if you've read the comic book and the book and everything else that they've done to kind of fix what happened in the film and the legacy of this film, points to the fact that in this planet of prisoners, and they all have this brotherhood or monk, Golic, who is the one who is seen as the craziest, sees the xenomorph, his first experience with the xenomorph as a god. And then when everything he does from that end on is to appease that god. And then you have all the conflicts that Dylan has with his people. Like when the three or four that are trying to rape Ripley, his line is, "I gotta educate the brothers." He's got the speeches. The writing for the speeches that Dylan gives is fucking fantastic. Every time he talks, they are they are sermons to his brotherhood. They're not to Aaron's, who they call 85, and they're not to the superintendent, and they're not to Ripley. They are to his followers. And every time he opens his mouth, it's a brilliantly written sermon. Now, that is what's missing from all the other prisoners. Don't get me wrong, but they're followers. They're followers until their faith is tested. And their faith is tested at the very end when Dylan has his conversation on would you rather die on your knees or stand up and fight. And that you have to get to that point where this is the ultimate test of their faith. They don't have to do anything. This is a test of their faith that they're going to kill this alien before the alien kills them. It's all about faith in this whole movie. And I think when Galax, go ahead.
That's to me, it's like my biggest thing. One of the changes that just made no sense to this is I understand why they changed the Wood Planet. I understand about the budget and all that stuff. I really don't understand why they made them prisoners. Like, because it makes no sense of the prison itself, because it's a weird honor system that, has now become like religious-fied and stuff. And it's like, then wouldn't it make more sense to have kept the original script of them being monks? Like, it really doesn't make any, like, that's another problem I had with the movie, was like, knowing the fact that the original idea was these were supposed to be monks, I'm like, they should have stayed monks. You can still have your, and make the religious parts make more sense versus having a weird prison where suddenly everything's religious. And also, you can keep the Gallic character because, again, you can have a character like that, a bunch of monks and stuff. Like, all that makes more sense in a setting where this is a temple and these are all monks versus these are a bunch of prisoners that have suddenly weirdly become religious that is never really fully even delved upon.
So I'm gonna laugh at you a little bit on this one, dude. I'm gonna laugh at you on this one a little bit because the prison system that they've created in this film is the exact same type of prison system that they do in your typical dramatic prison show. They have those religious people in a prison. It is a brotherhood, and it's faith that drives those type of stories and those characters in a real prison. They just transported that whole concept to a future. Now, I don't think the monks would have ever worked, because the whole idea of monks is they don't do anything. There would be no reason for them to ever help the Ripley character, a monk. Like they would never. Like you have to have at least the characters have some type of conflict with them, and I think putting them as prisoners who are already conflicted to begin with, but because they are so isolated, they've bonded through religion. When a woman shows up, that kind of brings in that temptation, and that's what they need, is that temptation to break the brotherhood up. I think you need that type of ideal in there. Now, I don't know how well that's integrated with the Ripley story that they're trying to tell. I kind of almost see Ripley's story as the secondary story in this overarching planet of, based on religion and stuff, because she's based on science, but we don't get a whole lot of those themes in this film with the science aspects.
Oh no, this is in my opinion, not including Resurrection here. I'm just talking about the first three movies at this time of the statement. This is the worst written Ripley was. Completely the worst written character, or worst written version of her and stuff at this point. Because the thing is, you can kind of tell Sigourney Weaver is ready to stop. I mean, again, that's why she even agreed to do this movie, was she was like, you have to kill Ripley off by the end of this movie. She's like very much like, and I can kind of tell in her performance that she's not fully there. Her character's not written well because, like, again, with the temptation stuff, like, one thing, this is a weird nitpick, but hear me out for this. I hated the fact that Ripley and Clemens became a couple. Like, the fact that, because the problem is, the last two movies and stuff, Ridley has never been a sexualized character and stuff. Not really. Maybe a little bit in Alien
Towards
2, but not
Hicks,
really.
a little bit towards Hicks.
A little toward Hicks,
Yeah,
but
she
nothing ever
attaches.
happened. So the
No,
fact that you have in Alien 3, well, and that's the other thing too, is like it you already had the Hicks character, but they had to kill Hicks off. And then the fact that Ripley immediately just I never bought Ripley and Clemens' chemistry, and the fact that they went so quickly to sex and stuff really bothered me. Of like, this is a it's weird to say, but I'm like,
no,
Ripley's a character that I don't think you should have some sexual stuff with, unless again, like it was fine with Hicks originally, but to have the character just 180 to another guy and have sex with the character was just did not make any sense to me. It bothered me a whole lot. And also like, and this is just a personal thing with me, I hate rape attempt scenes. I'm okay with them if it makes sense in the context of the story and if there's some comeuppance. There's no comeuppance in this movie with it. Like, it happens, sure, some of those characters do get killed, but Ripley herself never gets comeuppance on that. And it's just and that also bothers me of like for me it's like if you're going to have a scene like that, I need some comeuppance for that character and there's none in the story.
well, you mean for Ripley? She
Yeah,
does knock
Ripley.
out. She does knock out the one person who grabbed her.
Yes, but there was multiple people. It would have been fine if there were if if she it's just she knocked out one person and that was it. And that
Well,
to me is not enough, especially with the fact there were multiple other characters and what
I
and
think
stuff.
Dylan had the rest of them taken care of at that point. Uh,
Like
I will agree with you on the Clemens thing. The relationship does seem a little fast to me, but it's never bothered me as much as it may have bothered you because I've always loved the Charles Dance actor. Um, and so because I'd seen him in tons of movies before I'd seen Alien 3. So I knew who he was. I've always liked that actor. More so when I saw this movie at the theater, I was surprised he died halfway through the movie. That was a shock to me. I was not expecting him to die so soon in the movie. Um,
yeah, I like Charles. I like Charles Dance. I like the Clemens character. That's the annoying thing is I like the Clemens character. I like Charles Dance. It just was so weird to me that that in the previous movies, you had Ripley and Hicks, have their little thing and stuff, but even them, you never had a sex scene between them or implied sex scene. It was always the oh will they won't they type deal. And that's what didn't make sense to me is you get to the third movie and then you have Ripley basically on the first week of knowing this guy immediately has sex with the character and stuff. It didn't make sense to me of with Rip the way Ripley has been written in the past. It did not make sense to me, and even their chemistry and stuff. They always strike me when their scenes first started of oh this is another character of kind of a friend character, a character that kind of like hey like let me help you, not a oh this is a romantic thing and we're gonna bone now.
well, I will say this. With the Clemens and Ripley relationship is almost the exact same type of relationship that Ripley had with Hicks in the previous scene. Ripley needs a character in the film to actually relay some of her more inner emotions and ideals to. There is
Yeah,
no other character in the movie that she does that to. Now, she does a little with Dylan, but Dylan is a religious fanatic. I can say fanatic because he is a religious fanatic. He's also a stone cold killer too, which she never believes Clemens is. Not even after he tells her his story. And Aaron's, who is in several scenes with her without anyone else, he's called 85 for a reason. And so she doesn't really trust him or can believe him because he's a company man as well. So it's like you have to have a character like that if you're not going to use the Hicks character, whether or not Michael Biehn decided to come back or not. And they had to write him out. They had to still have a character like Hicks in the film. And they just escalated. She had a platonic relationship with Nick's character in part two. She has to take it a little, they take it a little bit further in this scene, but they don't dwell on it. They have sex, and then it's the next day, and you almost, because you don't see it and it's just referenced, it seems like they could have not done it. But I think for the information that comes after that, and the Clemens character who will protect her from the superintendent, I think they needed that. Is why it's there. That's my only thing about that, is because Clemens is protecting her from the superintendent. And otherwise, if they didn't have this deep relationship, there would be no reason for Clemens to protect her from the superintendent.
I think you still could have gone away. The problem is, again, it was too fast. It's what it is, what it really is to me. It's the James Bond syndrome, where it's like, okay, you got a character, the character falls in love, blah blah blah. All right, next movie. All right, obviously the girl's not back, so that is a new girl, and now James Bond falls in love with that girl, and then does the things, and that's kind of what it felt to me. It felt James Bond-ish, where it's like, yes, I agree. Does Clement's character need to exist in the story for Ripley? Absolutely. And I'm completely okay with that. What doesn't make sense is how fast their relationship goes versus Hicks's character, where it's like, yes, obviously, like they had the moment where they cremated Hicks and Newt and stuff, but relatively speaking, they are still freshly dead. So it feels weird for Ripley to just immediately, like, Ripley does not strike has not struck me as a character that would be so quickly be like, oh yeah, Hicks is dead and I liked him. Well, okay, I see this guy, I like him, now I'm gonna bone him. It's like, even if they have the camaraderie as the same, again, it just felt weird. It was very James Bond to me.
No, no. I mean, there's a lot of people who have said that, but the one that gets me through that is I don't think they have any strong feelings for each other. Like they have a mutual respect. They had sex, and that was all it was. It was sex.
Yeah.
I don't think that she falls in love with him, and I don't think he falls in love with her. They have a mutual respect after they have sex. Uh, yeah, like you don't see either one of them trying to romance the other like James Bond. So I only brought this up because you brought James Bond up. James
Yeah.
Bond be trying to romance the girl before he has sex with him, and of course they're in the film they're usually in the James Bond film until the end. Neither one of these two look like they have a romantic relationship. They look like they just it was a moment to have sex, and they neither one of them had sex in years, and they just had sex, and now they just have mutual respect to one another. That's kind of how I've always taken it. I never thought that they had any type of real feelings for each other at all. I never have. It
Yeah.
was just yeah, it's just they had sex because and they're mutual friends and they trust each other. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, it's still just a weird scene for me,
No, I'm not
overall.
disagreeing. As like I said, it is odd. It is odd. And I have given myself a justification for that because I've seen it so many times. Like when I saw it in 92, like I said, I thought it was odd too. But over the years and over the multiple different times of watching the film so many times, I've given myself a justification. Is it a valid justification? Who the hell knows? David Fincher isn't talking anymore because he wants to forget this fucking movie.
Oh yeah, he hates this movie. Like, I am very glad this movie did not kill his career. Like,
Well,
with the career he's had after, I'm very think we again, like, for our listeners, we were talking about this we're off mic about another director in a similar boat and stuff. I am glad this movie easily could have killed his career, and I'm glad it did not.
Well, it didn't. It wasn't a box office disappointment. It didn't tank in the box. It just well, no. Let me rephrase that. It wasn't a. It wasn't a box office hit. It was not. It was just a disappointment because it didn't make nearly as much as the last one did,
Yeah.
and it's because it's depressing. His fucking and you kill your main actor off at the very end, which everybody knew before going in. Like in 90, we kind of all knew this was Ripley's last movie. So we all were
Well, we
anticipating the end.
thought at the time it was Ripley's last movie, because
Oh
that's
yeah,
another thing with this movie, that it's one of those things of, I'm trying to be fair, but also I can't be fair at the same time, of like, the ending with this movie. it's impactful until it's not because Resurrection comes in and goes, nope, never mind. Like it would have been extremely bold. I would give this movie a lot of credit about killing off Ripley at the end if it actually meant something. But then the Resurrection came out and completely invalidated the end of this movie.
I always think of the Resurrection as its own separate thing, since the Ripley clone doesn't really act like this Ripley, and I give that credit to Sigourney Weaver. She's like channeled two completely different characters when she was doing these. So when I watch Resurrection, I always have a lot more fun because it looks like she's having so much fucking fun making that movie. Uh, and that movie's not nihilistic. It's not depressing. It's a fun popcorn movie. Whereas this is a depressing movie where you're forced to be in one of the dirtiest and grungiest locations where no technology ever works, and people are using real fire torches instead of flashlights because nothing works, and it's got everybody has bald heads because of lice, and the production design makes you feel that way, makes it feel like you're in like a sewer the entire movie. And that right there does not make for a very great cinematic experience when people wanted to go see Aliens again. Aliens was this fun, great, action-packed movie, guns going everywhere, military people getting killed. You got no weapons on this planet. People are using torches. There's one alien as opposed to a whole bunch of aliens. Like this movie had stuff going against it when it was announced, and it was in development hell because they tried to make it so. And to Fincher's credit, he wanted to get away from the what the James Cameron had done, which had made it a sci-fi action flick. So this is not a sci-fi action flick. This is a grungy, dirty horror film with a single slasher killing people in ways that are cinematically cool because he uses the wide angle lens, and this is why I love the cinematography of this movie. He uses the wide angle lens fantastically in this film, not only from the perspective of the alien xenomorph, but also in a lot of other sequences. I love the cinematography of this movie. The cinematography is fucking fantastic in this movie. It looks even better in the
Yeah.
producer's cut because of the way they edited it, and it doesn't seem fucking choppy. Like theatrical cut was choppy. This one, producer's cut, it just doesn't seem choppy.
Yep. No, I mean the thing is there are things I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said about a lot of things look good with it. I think my problem, and I give David Finch credit of trying to do something different to aliens and stuff. I think for me, my problems with the movie comes into um, you look at Alien and look at Aliens and stuff, and you're up in the ante, you're adding, and this movie starts as a detraction, right? It starts off killing off Hicks, killing off Newt, immediately going back to square one. And then again we go back to Aliens where we had a bunch of xenomorphs to again this movie we have one xenomorph, and it was for me when I was watching the movie, other than sure the religious stuff was interesting and stuff, nothing in this movie felt necessary for it to exist. There was nothing, there was no ex for me personally, I was this did what a lot of sequels what bad sequels do and good sequel it lacks to do what good sequels do, which is expand. Nothing expands here. Nothing expands on the mythos other than Ripley dying. Like we don't. Okay, I will say we also did get the view of seeing a xenomorph in a different form and stuff. But other than that, we don't learn more about Weyland-Yutani. We don't learn about what like that was one of the original scripts was we were going to get explorations on that, and that was disappointing. Because that would have been interesting. It is uh again, this is nothing really. Even Ripley, the character herself, is not expanded upon more and stuff. Like her character doesn't grow from this. Again, like I said earlier, I felt her character's distracted from this and stuff. Like nothing in this movie screamed to me, this needed to be an alien movie. It's you could have literally changed the monster out, and it could have been any other sci-fi horror movie and stuff. It didn't scream alien to me because it didn't really add anything new to it. It detracted.
It's funny you say that because a lot of people had the same opinion about the Aliens movie when it came out after Alien. People were like saying that didn't feel like the first
Yeah,
Alien. No, it didn't. It didn't feel like it. It was a completely different movie. Aliens was a completely different movie that people that when they
yep.
originally Aliens came out, there's like, well, these are not the same movie. This is an action movie. What happened here? They were just a little bit thrown when they saw it by what James Cameron added. And of course, if you talk to Ridley Scott, he can't stand what James Cameron added to his to the first film either, because he added the Queen Alien and all that type of the hive mentality and all that type of stuff, which was never explained in the original film. And so you go from one film to the next, and this is a problem with a lot of these franchises back then when they would hire new people to kind of develop sequels based on the original concept. We recently talked about this with the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and how different that was for the first film because the people that came in afterward, after Wes Craven, just decided to do their own damn thing. And of course, James Cameron did his own thing with Aliens, and then David Fincher did his own thing with this one. None of these movies look alike. None of them. None of them look alike. You watch each one of them, they
No.
are a distinctive, stylistically made film based on the director. And in theory, the story elements and everything follow behind that. Now, James Cameron had a lot more leeway with the second one because he wrote the second one. And as we all know, Ridley Scott didn't write the first one. He directed it, but he didn't write it. And David Fincher didn't really write this one either. He directed it.
Yeah.
I can't remember if the duo, I don't want to say their names wrong because I love their work, which is why I keep avoiding saying the directors the duo's name.
Walter Hill and David Guile.
No, the directors for the fourth one, Resurrection. It's French. I don't want to pronounce their name wrong. But their style is
Oh,
very much present in that film, and the reason why that film feels so different is because they're French directors and they have a different sensibility of fantasy and sci-fi and comedy. And there's a reason why so many people didn't like the fourth one. I was like, yeah, but that's what makes it so fun. Um, this one just
well,
happens to be.
the fourth alien's written by Josh Whedon.
No, I didn't say the writer. I said the director. The director.
Jean Pierre.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pronounce the last name.
I love their work, but I can't fucking remember it. Yeah, Josh Whedon
Net.
wrote the first draft. I don't know how much of that actually went through the ringer because even the comic book adaptation and everything else that has to deal with Resurrection is slightly different than the movie that we got. So I kind of think that the duo decided to make some changes when they did the film because their director's cut, is the only one in which they didn't change almost anything. It's like, well, this is the movie I made. This is perfect. This is what we wanted. They changed the beginning and that was it, pretty much. So I kind of sit back on the fourth one and say they're the only ones that didn't have some shit interfered with them. They were happy with the movie that they produced, and they will always be happy with the movie they produced. But every other person, Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher, all had issues with their final films. The theatrical cuts and their directors and producer cuts are different. I think that this was the wrong film to have come out in '92 after Aliens, which was a crowd pleaser, a fucking crowd pleaser that put the whole Aliens franchise in the stratosphere. Without that film, Dark Horse Comics would not have produced so many comic books that kept them alive for over 30 years, 40 years before Marvel took over the licensing. That that movie right there was what made so many fans of this franchise. And then it was cut short by this film, which no one in general audiences likes because of what they ended up with. That just, in my opinion, I think this is very much like what happened with John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing is so fucking depressing that nobody wanted to see that shit when it was released. They'd rather see E.T. E.T. was the hit. The Thing was the thing that was left the audience's floor until years later when people reevaluated and saw how brilliant the Thing was. This film, unfortunately, has sequels. That lots of sequels now that came after it. Lots of bad press about it. Lots of bad everything about it. And I think even Resurrection is not talked about nearly as bad as this film. Aliens vs Predator Requiem is not talked about nearly as bad as this film is. And I think because those films were fun in
Yeah,
comparison.
I think another reason why people, get Alien 3 gets so much bad press comparatively is I think is added to again how well documented
Mm-hmm.
how much this movie went through the ringer with the scripts and all of that stuff. Again, all the cast hate the movie. The director hates the movie. It's one of those things of like I think the other movies don't are not well documented with that. Also, there's a very common thing where like, when people by the time we get to Alien Requiem and stuff, like everyone everyone's already the problem is that everyone's opinion of the Alien series had already gone down at that point, and a lot of people point to this movie as the Kickstarter of that, where they're like, oh, the Alien series went downhill after Alien 3 and never recovered is the common general public opinion of it.
Which is completely inaccurate considering that most of the films that came after this film have been successful. I think
Yeah.
Alien versus Predator Requiem is the only one that has not been like successful, and maybe Covenant. I don't remember Covenant doing well. Um,
Yeah, I gotta look and stuff.
uh,
Yeah, I will say this though, I don't think this is the worst of the Alien movies. I know that is one of the well opinion things of it. I don't think this movie is the worst Alien movie. But it's definitely near the bottom, at least for me.
that's and see that's for everyone listening. I love like me and Philip love to disagree on movies like this, and I always like to talk about these movies because if anyone who's listening to this podcast, we haven't even talked about the first Alien movie yet. We skipped that one. We did Aliens, and now we're doing Alien 3. Uh, we'll get around to Alien eventually. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this because I know what other people have said about this film. I don't know if I would have to read how many people actually say they don't like the film itself. David Fincher doesn't like it because of the fact of the studio interference. But I've not read myself anything about any of the actors hating the film. Uh,
Sigourney Weaver has been very open about it and stuff. Because she had to do that because she basically had to defend David Fincher a lot. She's gone on record about that of just being like,
well, she was a
let me
producer on
find a
it.
comment. She said, uh, uh, this is the no, what was her comment? Uh, she said that it was very smart to here you go. It was they had a great idea to put David Fincher abroad for this film, but to not support the guy was very idiotic.
Yeah, that's not to say that she thinks the movie is bad. She's a producer of the movie too, so I'm sure that
Yeah.
she had a lot to say in the movie, and she got a huge paycheck for this. You said you weren't alive, I guess, when this movie came out. They paid her a shit ton of money extra to cut her beautiful hair off to go bald for this movie. That was a huge thing when this movie came out or was being produced. They paid a shit ton of money for her to cut her hair to do this movie. And like I said, she's like one of the producers on the film as well. So she made a huge payday off the film, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was actually one of the people who kind of put David Fincher's name in the hat because he had done so many great music videos at the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know
he
who also got a good paycheck from this movie? Michael Biehn. Once he found out about the way they were going to kill his character off, because originally his body was going to be like they actually had already they didn't talk to him beforehand, but they had actually made a dummy like with his face and likeness and stuff, and he caught wind from a producer about it, and he immediately flipped his
Yeah,
shit about it,
I
and
remember that.
basically uh and went to the studio about it. So they ended up they cut that, so that's why the final product is more mangled and stuff because again, they don't want because Michael Vine was like, "You absolutely not doing that," but they compensated him with the photo they do in the movie. Apparently, they gave him a whole bunch of money to use that one photo in the movie.
Yeah, well, he was still a big actor at the time this was made. So yeah, it's a shame that he hasn't done much in the last few years because I've always liked him as an actor, enjoyed him in so many films. Of course, James Cameron used him brilliantly in a lot of his films, his earlier films. So, um, but I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna defend the fact that they killed my favorite characters, which is Hicks and Newt. I mean, that's why I tell everybody if you want a good sequel to the original movie, just read the Dark Horse comic books. The Dark Horse comic books take directly after the fucking aliens because that's the world they use. I never did like the aliens changing different forms with different creatures that they inhabit. I thought that was a dumb idea. It's grown on me now from the films, mostly because of the Alien versus Predator one. I was like, the Predator Alien was kind of fucking cool. But if Requiem got anything right, it's the Predator Alien was about the coolest fucking thing in that movie.
Red Alien looked really good. Actually,
Cool.
actually going back into why this movie gets so much hate, and I have to agree with the decision to kill off Hicks and Newt
Yeah.
so unceremoniously was really a bad choice. Um, I understood I understood the idea of wanting to start fresh, but I think that was not the way to do it. Especially with the way, again, we're talking about the editing. The editing at the beginning was so bad because you essentially kill these characters off screen in a weird edit cut.
Yeah, it's weird. The beginning sequence is weird because they don't really try and explain how the alien embryos are even in the fucking ship to begin with.
No.
To be honest with you, and an electrical fire is supposed to have caused this entire ginormous fucking whaling lieutenant ship to fucking destroy itself and just jettison the one life pod out. That the concept of how you have to get to the planet is a pretty limp one. Because I even none of the stuff I've read can actually justify how fucking two embryos got into the damn ship to begin with. Like you'd have to think that the fucking alien queen got into that part of the ship to lay two eggs without the egg sac and then fight Ripley and then get killed. But they can't ever explain that because it's stupid. It's dumb. You have to just buy into
Well, oh no, and that's another thing too of buying into it is the whole impregnation thing doesn't make sense too of like how long Ripley is impregnated with the alien queen before it comes out of her versus every other time we've ever seen anyone else get impregnated was also a like
They
you
do
just got a
explain
disbelief
that.
on that of
They do explain that. You don't pick up on it because it's not picked up on very well by anyone. You have to have read all the other shit. The secret cocktail that Clemens gives her both times he gives it to her is supposed to be the ideal of what prolongs it, because we are
Mm.
not told what's in his secret cocktail. But he gives it to her twice in the film, and you have to believe that that is what's prolonging the gestation of the alien. But
Yeah.
you have to have read all the other shit to actually get that. I was like you until I read the other stuff. I think, but I could be wrong about this. I think I read the novelization for Alien 3 before I saw the film, but I'm not 100% sure. I read them like at the same time because I saw this at the movies, so I can't remember if I read the novelization before I went to the movies and see the movie or after. And then of course the comic book adaptation I read after. And then the screenplay I read years later. So all the other stuff, and I think there's actually a more recent book of the original screenplay book. I have not read it yet, but I haven't because it's such a controversial movie. They had to reprint the actual screenplay. Pay no attention to that, everybody. I want to see who wrote it. William Gibson. I have not read it yet. Have it so I could read it. William Gibson's original screenplay for this movie, which is not the same as the novelization, which is not the same as anything else.
Yeah, and
So
see,
yeah,
that's the thing too is when you have to say, "Oh, I had to do homework. I had to read this, I had to read that." That's us. That's again, that is a sign of bad writing. Then it's like,
it's because no one's gonna read all the shit that I read. There are people like me who read the comic books and have been reading them for the last 40 plus years and all that type of shit. But your typical general film goer will not have any of that reference at all, and they're just watching this film. And this film is not fun. It's not. It's depressing. It's nihilistic. You're stuck in a confined space with a bunch of ugly, grimy, bald-headed prisoners. And if you're going into this movie thinking that you're going to have a good time with, like, you don't have the Bill Paxton character, Morris is not good enough to be the Bill Paxton character that you just love, or, Apone, or any of the other soldiers, then this film becomes something that you don't like when you walk out of the theater. It becomes this movie that takes a life of its own. It's like, oh God, that movie was so depressing and horrible. They killed the main characters off the very beginning. I was stuck with these prisoners. It was so depressing. It was ugly, grungy. Yeah, yeah. You can see, and people don't go back to watch these films. If they didn't like this film the first time, and they're a general audience, they probably don't go back to rewatch it.
no, it does. This movie, for at least for me, did not have any rewatchability of like, oh, okay, I could. No, other than like watching the, director's cut. I mean, that's about it. But even then, it's like it does help. It's a better version if you watch this, do watch the director's cut, not theatrical cut and stuff. But it's still a lot of the bigger. It fixes some of the problems in this. It fixes some of the problems, but people's overarching problems are not fixed. But that is the stuff that again are just overarching in this story again. Like, again, I think that again, like for me, I now will say this. I am okay with the idea. I know Sigourney Weaver did not wanted to kind of back away with the character. I am okay with the concept of her being the anchor in this series and stuff. Other than if I say that to a point, it would have been nice to see a hand, t touch, toss the torch to Newt for this series. That did not happen, unfortunately. This movie basically was like, bye, Newt. And by the time we get a resurrection, they're like, no, because that was the thing. And if we ever do a resurrection episode, I will repeat this. But originally, Josh Whedon was going to have Newt be the main character and she be the clone. But Fox was like, no, it's got to be Sigourney Weaver. We've got to keep it Ellen Ripley and stuff. And I'm like, I will give credit of like, I understand not, because a lot of the scripts had Hicks becoming the main character and stuff, and Ripley basically being a cameo and stuff and being off her own thing. I'm okay with the idea of Ripley being the main focus and stuff. I think killing off Hicks and Newt was not the right way to do it and stuff, but I am okay with the idea of keeping Ripley as the main.
It's one of those weird things is like it'd be interesting to sit down with the writers depending on let me rephrase that, the writers of the shooting script, um because I do know that the William Gibson's is not the shooting script. It's supposed to be like a really early, like the first draft. I do know that, which is why it's so different from the other versions I've read. But it would be interesting to see all the studio notes before they wrote the treatment to what they came up with to kind of placate everybody. And I'm sure David Fincher, even if this was his first film, had a lot of say because he had already had so much experience doing music videos and he has a distinctive style. We all know, even to this day, a David Fincher film or television project as opposed to some other director because he's always had that style, and that style is one of the reasons why I still love this movie as much as I do. I mean, like I said, even the theatrical cut, there is some amazing cinematography that he was able to accomplish in this film that none of the other films have ever done. None. And I think he's best utilized the widescreen cinematography better than anyone else out of any of the other films. I think a lot of what he did in this film is overlooked because of the film that he decided to do. And the thing is, you hired David Fincher. In every film he's ever done is this dark, brooding, ugly ass film. He doesn't do pretty fucking films. He doesn't do these audience appealing mainstream films. He doesn't. When you go see a David Fincher film, you know what you're getting into. And this film is just testament to that. One of the great things I loved about this film that doesn't get talked about enough is the soundtrack. Ellie Goldenthal's fucking brilliant soundtrack to this movie. The soundtrack does more for this movie than I sometimes give it credit for. The soundtrack for this movie is fucking phenomenal. It gets you into every scene and every action sequence without you actually knowing it sometimes. And the religious music and chimes that he throws in whenever Dylan is giving a speech is freaking phenomenal. It reminds me of what Hans Zimmer did with Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows, when he brought in all that gypsy music to accompany that soundtrack. This soundtrack with all those religious music overtones is phenomenal, and it is so different from the soundtrack from the previous two films. And that's one of the other things I loved about this film. This is one of my favorite soundtracks. I actually listened to this one more so than the second one. I love the first one. The first one's fucking brilliant. But I listen to this one more than I do the second one. This one's much better.
Yeah.
So we've actually talked a lot about this movie. Hoping that you all have actually seen the movie, and I know you have, because this is a hugely popular franchise. And if there's any movie in this franchise that people have talked about, it will have been this particular one. But I do want to ask you, Philip, because I think I've exhausted a lot of things I liked about the film and things I hated about the film. But I wanted to ask you if you have any other great comments to make on the film, because I like I said, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are more comfortable with your opinions of this film than my opinions on this film.
Yeah, it's one of those things that again, I think the reason this movie really gets bogged down is what I said earlier and stuff is I think if we take Alien away, if we change the alien, and stuff, and we just make this its own thing, I think the movie would not have gotten as much flack as it did. But because it was attached to the Alien property and there were expectations at the time and stuff, I mean, when you start the movie off by killing off two of the main characters from the last movie, you're already set. You're kind of setting yourself up to failure to a point, I would say. I mean, it's like imagine watching like the next like Avengers movie. Well, imagine watching a Superman movie and they're like, "All right, Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are dead." Is how the movie starts out. You're going to be like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is I think out of all the decisions they made in this movie, I probably say that probably is honestly the worst decision they made, because I think that already, I think a lot of audience goers watching this movie, as soon as that moment happened, I can tell you probably a lot of their brains turned off. They immediately were like, "Well, I don't like this movie anymore."
Oh no,
And
I 150% agree with you on that one. I and I get what 20th Century Fox wanted. I get it. They don't want to repeat what they did in the previous sequel for the third part. The third part in any franchise is always the movie that people look down upon.
Yeah.
But the third part in a franchise is the third film that people just kind of say, well, we want to see more of what made the second one popular. The third part of the movies that I'm gonna mention a couple franchises that I hate the third part for, but were extremely popular with general audiences. In my opinion, is that because they were so much like the previous movie is why people love them so much. Is I'm going to say Lethal Weapon 3, and I'm going to say Die Hard with a Vengeance. I don't like either one of those films. I think those are horrible films in which they are so much like the second film that people just go with them and they had a great time with them. They're not good movies, neither one of them. They're not good. Yes, but they are so much like the previous films that they made a shit ton of money and people were like, "Oh yeah, we just love this shit." And then we got Lethal Weapon 4, which is the same as the last one, and then we got I think two more Die Hards. Um but
A billion diehards. I think what you could have done in this movie is and it's an easy trope.
yeah.
The ship crashes, you can't find the bodies. It is movie 101. If you want to take a character out of the story, don't show the bodies. Don't show the bodies. Because then if they had done that, they set themselves up in a possibility where you can later on, like let's say Michael Biehn, if they want to bring Michael Biehn back if they want to bring him back for the fourth one, they could have done that. But they shot themselves in the foot because they already killed the characters and we saw the bodies. And we saw Newt's body. We had to have a whole morgue scene, an all autopsy scene with hers
Yeah.
and stuff.
It was
So
gruesome too.
you had no questions about if she was dead. And I think that was really bad writing on that of like if you were like, oh, I don't think we want to use these characters for this movie, just have them crash and we couldn't find their pod. Easily could have probably taken out half the bad will toward this movie for viewers and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, well, yeah, they shot themselves. If the studio, in my opinion, if the studio truly wanted to make money off the film like they did Aliens, they would have just made another one, just
Yeah.
like Aliens, which they could have done, because by that time we had comic books with aliens doing exactly that. We had books that were doing that exact same thing, but they decided to go something completely different. I always question that because they went somewhere different with this third movie, and then they went somewhere even more different with the fourth movie. And I kind of wonder why they decided to do that instead of doing something similar to the second movie, which we know everybody knows is like the most popular of all of them. More so than the first one. We all like say, "Oh, the first one's better than the second one." That might be true in some people's circle, but who do you think watches the second one the billion times they watch it? People stick the second one in more so than they stick the first one in, because it's just an audience pleasing movie. The second one is a 10 quadrant audience pleasing movie, which is James Cameron's bread and butter. He knows how to hit every quadrant of audience member out there equally well. He's been doing it forever, and he'll continue to do that forever as long as he kind of taps into that thing. But if you want to make money, you just do that.
Yeah, it really is odd because
It is odd.
they really I don't like you said earlier, and I agree. I kind of would love to sit. I really do want to sit down. I would love to sit down and be a fly on the wall for all these meetings because it's like you're completely right. Of like apparently a big thing again behind the scenes with this movie was Fox was like, we want this movie to make money. Like we just want the money. They wanted at the time they were looking for a box office success. So it's like you're right. At that point, you would think you would do the safest options possible. You would do all the safest options possible and stuff. So the fact that you have, like you said, a story where you kill off two of your main characters off screen, you have your main character almost get raped on screen, you have a whole subtext about religion in this too. That is anyone, you put that on a piece of paper in front of any executive, none of them would think that would be a safe option. So
No,
the fact that they still did it is honestly baffling.
it's baffling. It is baffling. It always baffles me in hindsight that this is what they decided to do. I was like, why didn't you just do the same thing with the previous film if you want to make money? It didn't. To this day, I'm glad they did Alien 3, whether it was good or not, because we have all this supplemental material about this one film for all of the shit that went wrong with it. Because we don't get any of this with any of the other Alien films. None of them we get this much shit for. There is a ton of stuff about what went wrong with this film. But from a
And it's funny because Fox learned their lesson and like because like you said, like Alien Resurrection is so much more of a safer movie and is so much more of like the more happy joy, like the more like on the part of Aliens thing.
well, that one, and when you watch it, that one is more of they went even different with the genre because they went horror, sci-fi, and comedy with Resurrection, as opposed to any of the ones. There's not nearly any comedy in the other ones, but there's a lot of comedy because of the directors they hired. That's how you know that they added some of that stuff in there, but that's also some of the stuff that made Josh Whedon famous later on. I still think this is part of his earlier works where he was doing all this some of his early screenwriting stuff. But the French duo were all that's part of their bread and butter. This sci-fi, fantasy, comic related stuff. So I think a lot of their sensibilities came in Resurrection, and I love Resurrection. Resurrection's so fucking much fun. I had a blast watching that at the theater when I saw that coming out. It was a breath of fresh air to watch that one as opposed to this one. But I like this one, like I said, more for what I believe should be in the film than what we actually got. So that I mean, I can do that with certain films. Most people cannot. They'll watch a film and they'll see the flaws in it and they'll say, "Fuck this movie. This movie sucks." I kind of sometimes there are some films where I know they're bad. I know there's things that are bad about them, but I also know the shit that went wrong with them. And I have this enduring love for these films. And I call them guilty pleasures. If we ever talk about these two movies, these are two guilty pleasure movies I know are bad, but I also know a lot of the backstory behind why they're bad, and that would be Supernova, and it would be Red Planet. I know they're bad. I also know the stuff that made them bad, but I like them because they could have been good. It could have been good. This is how I see this film. I think this could have been a great movie. It would never have made money. It's too fucking nihilistic, depressing, and everything else. This movie, I don't think after the first week it would have ever made money, even if it was a great movie. I think it's too depressing of a movie. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have ever made money, which is why it still boggles me that it was ever made. I'm glad it's made, but it would have never been made otherwise. And I'll keep
Yeah,
watching.
I definitely think now this is the interesting thing about the 90s that I think you don't see nowadays. You would never see a big studio produce something like Aliens 3 nowadays. But the 90s was weird. 90s was weird. Sometimes I mean, they were sniffing a lot of coke or something because again, some of the things that big studios would greenlit, studios today would never risk. They would never risk that.
Yeah, well, I'll go back to this. I'll go back to this franchise with the fact that when they shot Lethal Weapon 4, they had no script. It was fucking improv as they were shooting it, and everyone knows it. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna shoot a Lethal Weapon 4 movie. Let's just go out there and just make some shit up as we're doing it." And it feels that way. It feels that way.
Oh, and yeah, and this movie has that too. There was the script was not finished when they started filming this.
Oh, Jesus. And it was kept changing, and and David Fincher, like James Cameron, went over, probably went over budget, but definitely went over days, because he's a perfectionist. Those some of those rumors. I don't know the budget thing. I don't know if he went over budget like James Cameron did. But James Cameron kind of pulls like a
I
rabbit
think
out
they
of his hat.
they did go over budget.
Not surprised.
They went 20 million because originally they went from 45 to 65 million because of the reshoots because basically what happened was is again because the script wasn't finished, they would film scenes and then they would get notes from the writers being like, hey, that scene got cut, or oh, hey, we changed the scene, and they have to reshoot it again.
Well, I will say this: one of my things of reading and discussed for that I absolutely loved the production design, the set design, and the art direction for this film is fucking fantastic. The way that they have crafted this planet underground tunnels and how intricate they are and filmed is fucking brilliant. Like I said, the cinematography is great, but that only goes so far because the sets in this film look fantastic. Um, and you know, I have to think that David Fincher put a lot of that shit in there as he was going along, like he did in a lot of his other films, where he would change shit because it looks this right here will look better than that. I'm fine with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the reason why it went over budget. I mean, the movie looks amazing. It's just unfortunately for general audiences, it's trapped within an alien film, trapped within a prison planet movie, trapped within a
Yeah,
nihilistic future movie.
yeah, and they don't all mix well.
I don't think Fincher has gone back to do anything like this again.
Oh no,
No.
he had too much PTSD. Well, it's funny is because one thing that's nice is one of the producers on this felt bad about how David Fincher was treated and ended up helping him find the script for Seven.
Seven, yeah. Like I said, every one of his films are. And I could see a lot of the stuff that he developed in this film in Seven and Fight Club, especially. Some of it a little bit in Panic Room, but those two films early, I see a lot of that stuff in those two films in particular. And now he doesn't do stuff like this anymore. He does more cerebral stuff like Mindhunter and the stuff that's. I think it was Mank was the last movie. I think he did a film after Mank.
Yeah. Well, we'll see his latest movie that's coming
Yeah.
out as of this recording is going to be he's doing the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spinoff.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see how it all goes out. I think that'll be closer to what I want him to do. Generally speaking, the only film of his I thought that he was not qualified to do was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I thought was the way he filmed it was way too depressing and dark for the material. I don't think he needed to go that dark. I think he's just used to doing films that way. I think it works for this film. I think it works for all of his other films because he has a style. I think he was just the wrong person to do that. That was a huge hit for a lot of people too. Huge hit. I just think his
Yeah.
style for that one went a little too dark. I would have rather seen him do more like what was the serial killer movie he did? Holy shit, I can't even think about it anymore.
Seven?
Huh?
Seven or Zodiac.
Zodiac. Zodiac. Oh man. Like he has a like a particular like it's just brilliant sometimes what he does. I love David and I probably love this movie more now because it's David Fincher's first feature. I can hazard to spec that I liked it when it came out, but I like this movie more now probably because it's David. I probably would not have done all the research I've done, read all the extra shit I've done had it not been a David Fincher film. I
Yeah.
think that's probably the reason why I've done so much extra shit for this film. So, because I love him, I love his work. I love his work. It's like I love his work. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. He's great. So, with that, I want to thank you, Philip, for joining us on this conversation about Alien 3. For all you out there listening, what we love to do is we love to rate their movies from 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being amazing. But what we like to do is pull something out of the film, an object, quote, or saying to attribute to that rating. What is your rating for this film, and what quote, object, or saying are you going to attribute to it, Mr. Phillip?
Um, Overall, I would give Alien 3 2 out of 5. Uh, alien bursters bursting out dogs.
Chest bursting.
Chest bursting.
So everyone already knows I've been talking this movie up. So it should not come as any surprise that I'm gonna give it 4 of Charles S. Dutton's what Dylan's amazing prayer speeches in this film. I think that whoever was writing that shit was fucking brilliant all the way through. There might be some other plot holes and weirdness in the movie, but the speeches that that Dylan does are fucking phenomenal, and Charles S. Dutton just plays it up like a fucking pro. So that's what I'm gonna give it. This is a guilty pleasure movie for me. Do not take this as being the greatest achievement in film history or Alien franchise history, anything like that. This is by far one of my more enduring guilty pleasure movies, which is why I give it a higher rating than most other people would. So you should actually keep that in mind when you seek this movie out, if you seek it out, if you haven't already seen it. I do hope that you all out there have given or are taking what we've said as kind of like an ideal to go back and rewatch the film. I know there's a lot of people who watched it once and just didn't gravitate towards it at all, which is perfectly fine. But I hope that our conversation will have you going out there seeking out the film again and giving it another chance, which is what we here at Conversations in Horror hope you do with all the films that we talk about on our program. From all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, we hope you have been entertained by our conversation, and we will hope that you like, share, follow, subscribe, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast app, Spotify, or YouTube. And please make sure to check out our other podcast, Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, which is every first and third Friday, 8 a.m. on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, and YouTube as well. From all of us here, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation and you have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.